Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the weekly MMA Cycles Market Update. Today is Wednesday, the 29th of January, 2025, and I am Gianni DePoce, your host. We have the FOMC announcement today. The Federal Reserve will be announcing their next interest rate decision. The market is expecting them to not make any changes. In fact, the next expected move by the Fed is in either June or July, which from a geocosmic standpoint is very interesting because that's going to be around the time of the third and final Jupiter-Saturn square. So we'll talk about that a little bit more here, but let's go ahead and jump into the charts, starting off by looking at the Dow. We are within a spitting distance of new all-time highs here, and we had a really exciting start to the week. Over the weekend, there were some major news and developments coming from China on the artificial intelligence front. The DeepSeek AI program really rattled a lot of US tech stocks, and especially ones related to the AI trade. So we saw a big move lower on Monday in the NASDAQ, but the Dow really took that in stride and actually finished up convincingly near the highs. And now we are basically trying to close at one of the highest levels in history. Now we are in this intense period of geocosmic activity, and it started over the weekend when we had Venus trine Mars. And then today is obviously the Lunar New Year, so happy Lunar New Year to all of you out there. There's so many things to cover. I have to make sure I get all the bases for sure. But tomorrow we have Sun trine Jupiter and Uranus direct. And then we have Venus conjunct Neptune over the weekend. And then next week, we're going to have Venus ingressing into the sign of Aries, and then Jupiter will finally be going back direct. So I think that the price action that we've seen this week, this is that gap down that I was talking about on Monday here in the NASDAQ 100. Very typical of Uranus changing directions. Uranus is the maverick. Uranus likes to surprise you. You have to expect the unexpected with Uranus. And not to mention Uranus rules technology as well. So NASDAQ and tech stocks definitely bore the brunt of the sell-off. We're kind of seeing a separation take place within the broader tech sector. AI names, semiconductor names are now struggling, but we're seeing a lot of things in the software sector actually look good. So just remember that the tech sector is very broad and all-encompassing. It has a very big umbrella that a lot of smaller sectors fall into. But, as we are in the Fed day today, let's go ahead and take a look at bonds and see what's happening on that front. We did rally to a new high in TLT here. We've been talking about the potential for some news cycles in bonds. This has been on MMA's radar for quite some time. Jupiter square Saturn, the battle, the tension between central banks around the world when it comes to easing and maintaining liquidity conditions without creating inflation. That is, growth and stimulus and inflation are Jupiter. Depression, contraction, and restriction is Saturn. And the square is really playing out. But, the first two squares we had between Jupiter and Saturn were with Jupiter in Gemini and Saturn in Pisces. But the third one, they will each be in the following signs. Jupiter will be in Cancer, Saturn will be in Aries. And so I think that's actually a good geocosmic placement for interest rates because Jupiter is exalted in Cancer, whereas Saturn is in its fall, or if you want to say detriment, fine too, in Aries. So if Saturn, the planet of restriction, is weakened, and Jupiter, the planet of stimulus, is strengthened, to me that says interest rates could be coming down, bond prices could be going higher. So again, that's when the market's kind of expecting the Fed to move next on rates. So just something to be on the lookout for. And I think that what we're seeing in energy, take a look at USO here, kind of helps that situation. We had quite the rally unfold in crude oil and the energy market going into that crest on the 15th of January. And that was actually one day after Venus squared Jupiter, Jupiter and Neptune being the co-rulers of the energy market. But we're coming back down pretty hard now. And this is going to help with the inflation data. As long as crude oil isn't soaring, this is going to help the Fed not have to pivot and start talking about raising rates again. In fact, if crude oil prices remain contained, there is still some wiggle room for the Fed to bring interest rates back down to the level of inflation. So we're looking, interest rates could perhaps settle in the 3 to 3.5% zone. In the short term, long term rates, of course, we would look for them to be a little bit higher. But that's what we're seeing on the energy front. Let's go ahead and jump over to gold and silver. Okay, gold, we did roll over to the April contract today. So if you're seeing a new all-time high in spot gold, it's not entirely accurate. So just wanted to share that with you. But they are looking good. Precious metals, both gold and silver. Silver is having a big up day so far. A lot of good things happening in that space. We've been discussing these developments in the various reports here at MMA. Some good cyclical factors, some good cyclical tailwinds right now. And it's really interesting because we have the Jupiter signature coming up tomorrow, Sun trine Jupiter, and precious metals usually don't like Jupiter. Now, if we can make it through Jupiter without a big reversal back down lower, that's a really good sign. So when a negative aspect for a market ends up corresponding to positive reaction, that's usually a really good sign. And to top it off, we have the Neptune aspect, Venus conjunct Neptune over the weekend. And when you have Neptune being aspected, it's usually pretty good for precious metals in the days afterwards. So something to keep an eye on there because I think that with the Fed probably signaling that rate cuts are still on the table, we could see precious metals make a big run. And we've also been watching the dollar very closely here. It really is a battle. Dollar against the yen trying to form a higher low. The euro has also staged a pretty impressive rally, but also just formed another lower high. Need to keep an eye on this because there's a couple cycle scenarios. We have Venus changing signs next week. We have Venus forming the conjunction to Neptune this weekend. Venus rules currencies, but the trend in the euro is down. So I think this is going to be a big problem for markets at some point, the continuous strength of the dollar. So that's what we're looking at on that front. And let's go ahead and jump over to cryptocurrencies. Bitcoin continues to consolidate near the highs. Uranus going direct. Okay, could we get a breakout here? Final run higher. We are in the final phase of the primary cycle. We already made a new all-time high just outside of the orb of the critical reversal date period that we're in now is 1 day outside that. You take a look at Ethereum. Ethereum's also trying to put in a higher low. We talk about Mars being in Cancer. We have seen 20% moves in both and Ethereum with Mars and Cancer. But then coming up at the end of, I believe it's actually the beginning of March, you're going to have Venus going retrograde. And so that's going to change up the dynamic a little bit as well in cryptocurrencies because that's a very powerful planet for these markets. So something to keep an eye on for sure. So that's what we're looking at right now. We were supposed to have Wyatt Fellows on today, but Wyatt did come down with something. So he's going to be joining us in 2 weeks. Next week, we're going to have Margot Amala on the program. So we were supposed to have our program of guests begin today, but Wyatt will be joining us in 2 weeks, going to be having some updates on the agricultural market. If you haven't been privy to it, live cattle prices just absolutely going exploding to the upside. Remember, Uranus is still in Taurus, so definitely want to have Wyatt on to discuss what's happening in the livestock market as well as in the grain market. But with Margot next week, a lot of heliocentric stuff for those of you that are interested in that. But that's what we're looking at right now. Thank you so much for joining me. Please subscribe to the channel and hit the like button. Ray conducted a webinar this past Saturday on the 25th of January, where he kind of just updated the landscape, what's going on in the world, economically, politically, socially, through a geocosmic lens. Tremendous feedback on that. Check it out. The recording is available at www.mmacycles.com. And then, of course, we have our regular program of reports. Vipka Held's technology report will be debuting next month in February. But we also have an opportunity to all get together in person. And Ray, myself, Vipka, Ulrich, and Puyan will all be present at the Cosmic Convergence Conference in Orlando, Florida from March 7th to March 9th. You don't want to miss that. There's going to be a whole slew of financial astrology presentations and more being put on by our friends, Faye Cochran. So you don't want to miss that. And if you want a little bit of a warm weather break, that's the place to come meet the MMA team. So that's all for now, everyone. Thank you so much for watching. We'll see you same time, same place next week.